All right, and after you chop up your daily solutions, you're just going to have to add a dash of podcast. Now, it's important to not overdo it. The podcast can be pretty potent. But just go ahead and mince in 4 ounces of all that together here in the pot. And, oh yeah, you smell that? No, yeah, of course you can't smell that. You're not here. But it is very delicious. Let me just take a little taste here. Oh, very delicious. I'm just going to go ahead and stick this in the oven.
All right.
Welcome. Hey, everybody. This is Ashkan.
Hey, Graham over here. And today's question is, have you ever done a trade show for a float center? And what should we consider putting in our booth?
We have done it.
And I guess, yeah, I read that question kind of weird, but I think they just mean like representing your
as a float center
at a
have
trade
you
show.
Done a trade show?
Exactly.
Yeah, we did one. We've done a couple smaller things, and we've done one actual like paid. We're having a booth at a kind of trade showy thing, bigger with lots of people coming to it. We did that for like a few years at a certain trade show. And, you know, honestly, at the end of the day, it was real hard to actually make back enough money to cover the cost of what the whole event cost you.
Yeah, and so the nice thing about doing trade shows, I think, is as long as you can break even for having, in our case, we were trying to get it to the point where we were breaking even for paying staff to go out there and spend time planning for it and setting up the booth and getting the booth ready ahead of time. And
which is not a small consideration. I mean, if you're doing it yourself, that's great. But at the point that you're having like your actual employees man the booth and all that stuff, it's not a small amount of time. You know, they got to prepare, they got to get everything like packed into a car or whatever. They got to go there. You usually need
maybe a truck.
Probably a truck. I mean, you need probably 2 people at least like running. You know, it's hard for just one person to be there for 8 straight hours or whatever it is, and that it just adds up. It just adds up very quickly.
So I think it's great awareness if you can even break even, right? Even if you're not making money on the cost of the booth and paying people to be out there. It's still great advertising at that point. You know, if you're breaking even, you can almost consider it kind of free advertising or low-cost advertising once you kind of consider what it's going to take you to run your own float. So for us, it was that break-even mark was kind of the holy grail of doing trade shows. If we could hit that, then we could kind of do as many as we wanted and just send our staff out to cool events to be able to run them, you know?
And I think we really only hit that once. There was only one point where we kind of actively, during the trade show, made back enough money to cover the cost of the entire thing.
Yeah, so...
And that was the one we were working and weren't really paying that much staff fees or anything like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, once you take out the staffing costs, it gets a lot better. So I would say it's a long-term marketing, maybe not the best, but when you're just starting out, I'm a firm believer in throw as much spaghetti against the wall as you can early on with your marketing efforts and get it out there, see what sticks, just get the word out about your business. So in that sense, if you have a big trade show coming through with, thousands or tens of thousands of people who come through over the course of a week or a weekend or something like that, then even if you're losing money, just call it an advertising expense, put up a booth there, and, especially within your first year, I think it's great to just get out there and make some face-to-face connections.
And things that went well, or things that we thought were doing well at the ones we did, I think there's a few things. One is I think a lot of people go to these trade shows and stuff like that often to buy physical goods. And there's some incentive because you're right there, it's all in front of you. And so you kind of need to have something like that with your place too. It's not something to hopefully make it so people make the purchasing decision right there while they're at your booth rather than just being like, oh, cool, I'll come check this out. And for us, that was just a discount. Like we just, we were selling like a discounted float specifically for people purchasing then at the trade show. So that worked well. Some people, when people were interested in floating, that seemed to be one of the things that kind of clinched the deal.
Yeah, and so here, like, one of the difficult things is really what you'd want is for people to be able to float right there at the trade show, right? Like, ideally, these things work best when you have a free sample that you can give out,
right?
Like things like lip balm or crystals, or having a booth that is a small item where you can actually give anyone who's walking by a little free sample of something.
And even when you go to these things, like the when you're going to these kind of wellness trade shows, like even people who are selling massage and other services, they're selling massages for right then and there. It's like they literally have their tables right there, and you're hopping on the table.
Or even like free 10 minutes of just the chair massage. And then they're trying to upsell to, actually coming into their spa or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you just can't really do that with float tanks without way more effort than you'd obviously make back in terms of revenue or attention.
And again, it's really like, people are mostly there. Most of the people selling things there are selling either services on the spot or products that people go home with. So you don't quite fit the mold in terms of, trying to get someone to make an appointment and come in later. But that's what you should be going for. Discounted floats. We set up, we had computers so we could book people right then and there, book people in for floats if they wanted to. So you got to have your mind kind of a little bit towards that.
Yeah, maybe hand out a free half cup of salt or something. We never tried that, but it seems like it would work great.
In terms of display, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Like, best case scenario is you have a float tank there. Like, that's immediately interesting and draws people's attention over to you and is not self-explanatory, but it's the best visual aid you could have.
I'm a float tank.
But that's ridiculous. Like, what float center just has like a spare float tank sitting around specifically to take around to trade shows? And they're huge and heavy and like expensive, and they're not.
Yeah, the more you move them around, the more you're going to damage them. Yeah. So even if you do have a display float tank, it's you're kind of lowering the value of it every time you're moving it around.
It's still probably not going to have water in it or salt water, especially. So the best kind of we did was we brought like
1,000 pounds.
Yeah, we brought 1,000 pounds of salt with us, which was still difficult. Like, we had to truck it over there, and we had to use one of their loading docks and lift all these bags. But at least it was cool. We had something, like some visual aid we could have to point at.
And the most common question we got was, so how long have you guys been salt distributors?
So that was, something, it's just when you're at these expo things, like, it really does become this kind of spectacle game almost. Like, you got to do something to draw people's attention because there's just so much like general noise.
And I have heard, so I've talked to other float centers who have done well at expos, and the kind of what they've said, at least, that worked for them was some kind of steep discount. So probably like 50% or more that they're discounting their floats by. And having like a big video screen or something kind of showing floating.
Right.
Which is something that we never did for our kind of expos.
No.
To us, it always felt weird having a big visual electronic display marketing going into complete nothingness, I guess. But that's again, just kind of personal bias. So, in lieu of actually having people jump into float tanks, displaying in some kind of way what the float experience will be like or communicating that with visuals, I think ends up being important.
Another thing I found to be useful is a lot of times these expos or trade shows have like some sort of speaking track as well. Mm-hmm. And it's usually really not that hard to get a spot to give a talk, especially when you're doing something interesting and unique like float tanks.
Oftentimes you just have to toss them an extra $100 or a couple $100.
Yeah, or and sometimes it's just free. Like, it's just they're just looking for people to give talks. And I actually did find that to be one of the more successful things we've done at these trade shows. It was one year where we gave a talk, and there weren't that many people there, but all the people who were there, like, that was like a lot of them went over and bought floats afterwards, so it was a really good kind of conversion rate because you actually really had people's attention. You could talk for 30 minutes, really go much deeper into it. It kind of gave it some credibility, so that I would keep your eyes open for opportunities like that.
Other good general trade show practices. One is, have a little bin or jar or something like that where people can toss in their business cards or write down their email address and put it in there for a chance to win a free float.
Yeah.
So even if you're not kind of making active money or even hitting the break-even part, at least you're selling some things, and in addition to that, building your email mailing list, which is a really important marketing asset.
Mm-hmm. One more thing that worked really well for us from like back in the day when we were going to these trade shows is having giant facial hair. We had these, when we were doing this, we had our giant, ridiculous mustaches, and that was such a easy icebreaker. People would just come up to us immediately and start talking about that. They get lured into talking about floating.
Do all salt distributors have giant facial hair?
So if you can pull that off, that actually seemed to work really well for us.
Yeah, another one is just try never to have an empty booth.
Yeah.
Right? Like if there's not people standing there talking to you right now, then reel someone in somehow, and that's where some of your displays can be good, a big screen, but it's like an empty restaurant or something, right? Like when you have action at your booth and there's 10 people standing around kind of waiting to talk to you.
Right.
Other people want to come check it out because that's how we are, social proof. And when there's no one there, people are kind of like, well, I don't want to be like the only one over there talking to him, like maybe someone went over there and it was a really uncomfortable experience and that's why no one's talking to them. I don't know how our brains work, but that's what I think goes on under the scenes.
I also found it really useful to have someone go around to all the other booths and talk to them. Like, surprisingly, a lot of the people who ended up buying floats were just people who were running other booths at these trade shows. And it's kind of just like this naturally, like, when you go around and you start talking to them, and they ask you what you're doing, like, and float tanks come up. Float tanks usually trump the conversation. Like, it becomes more interesting than what they're doing, and the whole conversation ends up becoming them asking you about floating and stuff like that. So I found that to be like, definitely have someone, whoever's running the booth, make sure somebody's got time to actually do a solid round through the entire rest of the show and chat with the other booths there.
And I guess selection of trade shows too. Like, we've really focused on wellness-oriented trade shows, things like that, which my guess would be that's what the question asker, I don't know if we have a more official name than that, but the question asker was also asking about, if you're going to like a tech trade show or something like that. I mean, float tanks are still technology, but I imagine that the wellness healing side of things probably gets a little more play than other categories you could fit into.
Yeah, for sure. And some of those bigger trade shows, people are flying in and stuff like that. Like, that's not of any use for you. So you're looking for something
local,
yeah,
healing, wellness based.
And there's lots of small, real cheap, we've just from like people who float with us have come and approached us about like a $50 booth with their little thing. Like, there's a few like real just low stakes ways of trying things out that it's nice to get a little bit of your kind of expo legs under you.
So there you have it. We've never made it work, but I at least have confidence that if we'd like pursued this as a really strong marketing force that we wanted to develop over several years, we probably could have come up with tactics that get it going. But it's not one of those things where you just kind of set up a booth, have some brochures about floating, and immediately just a deluge of customers come through or anything. At the very least, you have to work for it.
And it's time consuming. Definitely, like, it takes more time than you think it will. Just preparing to go out often feels like you're just going to be spending like 20, 30 minutes gathering everything, and it turns into like a whole day beforehand just like prepping and printing information out and all the stuff you got to do to kind of have a good booth.
Yeah, and an exhausting time afterwards when you've already been talking to people forever and you have to break everything down and go load it back into storage. And it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, I guess that was part of our kind of lack of motivation. It was just
laziness. We're very lazy people.
Yeah, so if you're like us, this might be a bad idea. All right. Well, if you guys have other questions, you can hop over to floatanksolutions.com/podcast. And that's it.
Yeah, just send it in there. It's a very simple form.
Yeah.
It'll only take a minute.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.